Automatic sunset clauses. Excising the fat in the legal code to what is truly necessary for good government. Generally, it should be much harder to pass a law than to repeal a law. One problem that we have is that many times a law is passed, and it sounds like a good idea, but once it is implemented it is a complete and total disaster, becoming very unpopular. The problem causing this is often that the policies were implemented because certain special interests benefited. That makes it much harder to overcome the same legislative hurdles that allowed it to become law. Even if the opposition party comes to power, supermajority provisions like the filibuster can prevent a popular repeal when big money interests are involved. A sunset clause is a way of preventing such problems. It is essentially an expiration date on all laws. Laws should be automatically reassessed and improved upon periodically. If a law is popular and is a success, it should have no problem being reauthorized. If the law is sort of okay, but there needs to be improvements based on experience, then those improvements need to be implemented. Sunset clauses used to be quite normal early in the history of the United States. If a horrible provision of a law was quietly shoved into a bill at the last minute, as happens to occur in the United States around Christmas, like the Federal Reserve Act, Income Tax, Veterans Disarmament Act, etc., there is little chance they get renewed if there is a forced sunset because everyone will know the renewal is coming. This also forces all laws to be validated by people alive at the time it is implemented. There are laws that are on the books in the United States that are over 200 years old. No one alive today had any say in their passage. Some of them are absurd and blatantly unconstitutional. The Logan Act is one such anachronism that should have been purged from the U.S. Code many years ago. If it was a good idea, then the people today should agree to such and reauthorize it. There is so much crap in the Federal Register of the United States that it is utterly mind-blowing. Most countries are probably no different. There have been suggestions such as Congress should have to repeal 2 laws for every new one that they write. Or, some have suggested we start by giving them $1 million salary and deducting money for every law they pass. There is no reason to do that. Just force a periodic reset on every single law, and renew all the ones that matter. This way they will spend their time on the most important legislation and bringing all the codes up to conform with modern ways of doing business. Reasonable people can disagree on the length of the automatic sunset period. It is sort of arbitrary. 7 years is a good period because that is slightly less than 2 conventional presidential terms. Public opinion generally changes dramatically during such a period of time, and it gives one a reasonable period to assess certain legislation. Because incrementalism is an important concept, and 20 to 50-year transition period for legislation older than 7 years old when this is first implemented would make sense. These numbers are arbitrary and subject to debate, but in many nations the code is so bloated, it would probably take an extended period of time to assess the entire thing to pull out the good legislation. Plus, there are programs like Social Security and Medicare people rely on, and a 7-year window of uncertainty is probably not sufficient to allow for these people to transition their lives out of dependency if the majority of the population just decided to ditch them within 7 years. As part of the overall strategy, any legislation from January 1, 2020, forward should be automatically subject to sunset within 1 year of our movement taking over. This is to assure people that they do not have to worry about voting for policies over process near term. This will be because all these policies will be subject to immediate will of the people based on this short sunset. See why the voting algorithm when combined with displays of power will be effective where other methods have failed. For more on why this particular provision is important to the psychology of the movement's success. In general, newer legislation prior to 2020 should be the first on the chopping block as the legislation is likely to be less entrenched, and the oldest laws on the books tend to be the most necessary ones: murder, theft, etc.